أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hazrat Ali Asghar was the youngest child of Imam Hussein. He was born only a few weeks before Imam left Medina. His mother's name was Rubab. Rubab had two children, Bibi Sakina and Ali Asghar. She and her two children accompanied Imam to Karbala. The fact that Imam took with him a newly born baby further demonstrates that his intention was never to engage in any armed rebellion. At Karbala, Asghar was only 6 months old. From the 7th of Muharram, there was no water in Imam's camp. Asghar was in great pain because of thirst. On Ashura day, after Hazrat Ali Akbar had been killed, Imam Hussein was standing outside the camp. He was left all alone, and he was preparing to go into the battlefield. Just then he heard a child cry. It was Ali Asghar, tormented by the pangs of hunger and thirst. Imam walked into Bibi Rubab's tent. He lifted the child from the cradle. "Rubab," he said, "I will take him to Yazid's army. Surely they cannot possibly deny this little infant a few drops of water." Rubab changed Ali Asghar's clothes. She even tied a small turban around his head. Imam Hussein carried the child into the battlefield. Walking up to Yazid's soldiers, Imam Hussein said, "This child has done you no harm. He is dying of thirst. I am begging for a few drops of water for him." There was no response. Imam said, "If you are afraid that when you bring Asghar any water I will drink it, look, I will put him on the ground, and you can come yourself and give him water." He put the child on the sands of Karbala and moved a couple of steps back. You can imagine how hot the desert sand was. Asghar lay there, not even wincing. He turned towards the enemy and stared at them. A murmur arose among the soldiers, but no one came forward to give water to the baby. Imam took Asghar in his arms and in a clear voice said, "Asghar, my son, show them how thirsty you are." Asghar turned his head towards the soldiers. He smiled sweetly, opened his mouth, brought out his dry tongue, and moved it over his lips. The ultimate sword had been unsheathed. The soldiers were so moved by this that they could be heard sobbing. Still, they were very afraid of Yazid, and none dared come forward to give water to baby Asghar. Umar Saad was worried. It seemed that Asghar was emerging victorious in this confrontation against the might of Yazid. He looked at Harmala, a famous archer, and said, "Silence, Hussein!" Then a terrible thing happened. Harmala lifted his bow. He aimed an arrow at the child. This was no ordinary arrow. This arrow had 3 heads and was used to kill horses and giant animals. The arrow flew across the hot desert. There was a hissing sound. Asghar smiled. He lifted his head and arched his neck. No civilized mind can even imagine what happened next. The hissing sound stopped, and Asghar lay still on his father's arms. Imam Hussein looked down at Asghar's neck. He saw the arrow, he saw the neck, he saw the smile, and then he could see no more. Our Imam began to feel faint. For a moment everything went dark. He could not see. There was a total silence over Karbala, broken only by the sound of the gentle waves of Farad. Even the enemy appeared stunned. Slowly Imam Hussein turned around and now looked at the baby in his arms. The arrow had passed through the tender neck and lodged in Imam Hussein's chest. There was no way Imam Hussein could dislodge the arrow. His 2 arms were supporting the still child. He looked at the sky and prayed, "Ya Allah, give me courage in this most difficult moment of my life." No prophet ever was subjected to a test as severe as this. It is said that the Imam was so shaken up by what had happened to the infant child that all of a sudden his beard went all grey and he looked like an old man. With his teeth he pulled his abba over Asghar to shield the body from the scorching sun. Then he took a few deep breaths and began to walk towards his camp. As he got near, he saw Rabab standing at the entrance to her tent. He saw the anxiety, the hope, and the fear, and the restlessness in her eyes. Our Imam seemed to lose all strength. He could not walk forward towards Bibi Rabab. He took 7 steps back, saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He stopped and thought that he must take the child to his mother. He again took 7 steps forwards and saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Once again his eyes met with those of Bibi Rabab's. Again our Imam seemed to lose his courage and rocked backwards, repeating, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Imam Hussain did this 7 times, forward and backwards. All the time Bibi Rabab's eyes remained transfixed on the child. Each time Imam recited, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Finally, somehow he got the error dislodged. He now took the dead infant to Bibi Rabab. He said, Rabab, this is a test from Allah which no mother has ever been asked to go through. Come with me. Bibi Rabab followed. With their own hands they dug a small grave, the father and the mother together, buried baby Ali Asghar.